Welcome to the CNBC Africa special. My name is Esther Awoniyi. Today, we're focusing on Nigeria's power sector. And my special guest is the Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola. Now, in the next 26 minutes, we're going to be focusing on the power sector recovery plan. We'll be talking about the progress made so far and other recent developments within the sector. Honorable Minister, it's a pleasure to have you on this CNBC Africa special. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So much is happening within the power sector, but we know that you're following a well thought out, detailed plan. That's the power sector recovery plan. And I know that it's in phases. So just bring us up to speed on the progress made so far. I know that you're starting with incremental power. Bring us up to speed.
Well, you already know a lot. And incremental power means getting energy that is safe, that is reliable, that meets global standards. So we're getting energy from hydro and thermal plants largely. We are optimizing installed capacity. As you might have heard or read, there's about 12,000 megawatt of installed capacity that have been constrained either by gas supply, transmission problems, and so those are the problems we are unlocking. And so we have progress generation to 7,000 megawatt. We have progress transmission to 7,124 megawatt. It was at December when we simulated the grid last. And we have progressed distribution to 5,222 megawatt. All of these from 5,000 of 4,000 of generation in 2015, about 5,000 of transmission around the same time, and 2,069 megawatt of distribution. So that's progress, almost doubling up what, and we're expecting about 1,000 megawatt of additional power this year. But fixing on the power sector recovery program, the sets of policies, actions, and work to do that seeks to address all of the problems that we have identified in the power sector value chain, from liquidity issues, payment issues, settlement of MDA debts, metering, energy theft, transmission expansion, customer service, governance. All of that is work in progress. So many board agencies are being filled slowly but surely. Just this evening, the nominee for the chairmanship of the NERC just called me that he has appeared finally for a Senate screening and all seems set to go. That has been delayed for a while. Yesterday, the meter regulations were presented and approved by the regulator, which means now a new class of licenses to provide meters on a rapid scale can come into market. So those are all the bolts and nuts of the power sector recovery plan program. You might recall the 701 billion naira payment assurance guarantee. You might also recall the settlement of about 26 billion naira MDA debt. So it's a daily work in progress, running repairs, if you like that word, and we're fixing and we're seeing progress. And we have momentum now and the wind behind our sail.
Last time we spoke, you talked about momentum, that you having momentum in the sector. But you know, sometimes I look at the newspaper headlines, and in the power energy section, one sees headlines like, you know, regular system collapses. We see things like we're still hovering around 4,000, sometimes below 4,000 megawatts. And I'm wondering, we've increased installed capacity, but we still see those low numbers. Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I can't take responsibility for how media headlines are cast. I know that bad news sells stories. So, but what I can't take responsibility for is what I'm doing. And the difference between the first leg of our roadmap and the second leg of our roadmap, which is steady power, is that until you reach steady power, you cannot totally rule out breakdowns. You need generating plants, transmission systems, distribution assets, all mechanical, electromechanical, and related appliances. From time to time, they need to be maintained. From time to time, they will break down. From time to time, you need to change parts until you reach the point of steady power, which means that you have enough and you can build a redundancy. You can't maintain, you can't replace parts, you can't repair without shutting down. So these are things that will happen.
And those things don't slow down the process of getting to that steady power?
No. We're not. So when you see hitches in the system, they're not unusual given where we are. And some of these hitches are not only for mechanical, operational, or repair purposes. Some of them are environmentally linked, especially like when you have bad storms, when you have sometimes prevention to save lives. Some of the systems are shut down. So if people don't check to understand why some of these things happen, you will see that sometimes after a bad storm, you have outages. We have to be sure that the system is safe again to switch it back on. We want to produce electricity and supply, but we also want to prevent loss of lives and injury to people. Sometimes also, like what we had in January, we had bushfires, and then there was heat and combustion. The combustion affected the gas line. The gas line erupted, so our supply went out. And we were quick to notify the public. So there's a lot of transparency also coming on. People now know what caused what and why what happened. That doesn't mean that we have solved the problems. And even in the most efficient and prolific systems, you still have outages one way or the other. What you want to do is reduce the number of outages, and you want to respond when they happen, and you want to inform the customer and the citizen why this is happening. So those are the governance and service customer service issues that are also part of the PSRP, the communication issues, and the application issues.
Now, within the power sector recovery plan, a lot is talked about around tariffs, the shortfall, market shortfall, the fact that, the fact that we cannot increase tariffs now, and the longer it takes, the bigger the shortfall and the need for subsidy on the part of the government. Tell us about that, and how close are we to seeing tariffs being increased, at least cost-reflective tariffs?
No, I think that it would be unwise of me to say anything about tariffs at this time. And I say this because tariffs are not the responsibility of my ministry. They are the responsibility of the regulator, NERC, and that regulator is independent of me. I have given advice in the past, I have rendered my opinion in the past when tariffs were increased. I've also rendered my opinion about those agitating for tariff increases. But the only thing I want to say is that I want to stay away from increase or decrease. I want to use the word reviews, because I think that in that way, tariff reviews are consistent with the realities of any economy. The assumption that the tariffs must go up is not one that is immutable. It is possible that the tariffs may go down if the right things are done. It may go up, it may go down, and we must leave NERC, the regulator, to decide the parameters for reviewing tariff. And one of the things that will be critical to that is the ability to do justice between the consumer and the provider, which is meter. How am I sure that what you are billing me is what you supplied me? And so, but as I said, I don't want to prejudice the position of the regulator, but we're seeing that more meters will come on stream, so the regulator will decide when is the right time and in what way the reviews will go.
Some might wonder or argue that, it's all within the power sector, And if it's a problem at that level, and you said they're independent of you, yes. But if it's still a problem at that level, doesn't it still cast some kind of shadow over the entire power sector recovery? I know that you're focusing on increasing power, getting off-grid, focusing on off-grid solutions and all of that, but I'm just thinking it's still part of the whole process, and people it's easy to still mash it all together and say, you know what, at the end of the day, are we getting power at what cost?
It would be inappropriate to, as you say, mash it up together when the law has unmashed it and separated it. My role is clear under the law, and one of the strongest things going for the privatization in the power sector is that we are applying the law as best as we can. And that is building a lot of confidence. People are feeling that, okay, with this team, they will play by the rules. So they've seen us play by the rules on MDA debts. They've seen us play by the rules on payment assurance guarantee. They've seen us play by the rules on many contractual issues, and this is how we want to keep it. So the rules say that NEC approves the tariff. It doesn't say that the minister does so.
I think we'll just take a quick break, but thank you for your time so far, Honourable Minister. It's been a pleasure talking to you so far. I've been speaking to the Honourable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola. We've been talking about the progress made so far with the power sector recovery plan. This is a CNBC Africa special, and we're looking at Nigeria's power sector. We're focusing on the power sector recovery plan, and my guest has been the Honourable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola. Honourable Minister, thank you for your time so far.
Thank you for
Let's talk about some other developments within the sector. Let's talk about the government's plans to resell the Afam power plant and the Yola Disco. Tell us about that.
Well, you might recall that there was a previous privatization with regard to Afam power plant. Afam has 5 major plants, numbered 1 to 5, that contain, I think, about 18 to 20 generating units. Now, on its own, it's a total of about 900 megawatt when fully installed. But many of its turbines are not operating. Some have even been sold and cannibalized before the privatization. But the last exercise in 2013 produced a buyer, but that transaction wasn't concluded. I wasn't here then, but I think I read that the buyer couldn't put up the funding. So we want to try again to see whether there will be other takers. So that's the story about Afam that you hear. But what is instructive to know about Afam is that Afam 4, as I said, there are 5 major units. Afam 4 was not generating any power when this administration took over. We are now generating 107 megawatt from Afam 4. We've repaired the damaged transformer. So that's part of our incremental power. Afam 3 was totally dismantled and cannibalized. So we are nearly completing a 240 megawatt investment by General Electric into that. Okay, and the whole idea is that once it's completed, it's sold, General Electric takes out their investment, and whoever buys it can then operate it, put it on the grid, and get paid. That is almost completed with, there are 8 turbines, brand new 30 megawatt turbine installed by General Electric, and a switchyard station, which government is building to. So that's what's happening. Yola Disco is one of the discos that was privatized. The party that acquired it then declared force majeure, as it turned out, saying that there were security situations there. But mind you, the security situation has started in 2010, and the transaction was concluded in 2013. So that security situation was not new. It was existent before the deal closed. In the event government has accepted, subject to condition, the handover of the assets, it is now being run for the time being by a government official, and I must tell you, it is one of the most efficient distribution companies in terms of service quality, in terms of customer response, in terms of innovation, and in terms of collection and response. And it is one of those companies that is already leveraging on the meter asset provider distribution regulation, because they have already committed to offtake 400,000 meters as soon as the regulations kicked into effect, which were published yesterday.
Now, I know that some of the power asset sales are also part of the plan to raise funding. I know that on the part of the power sector recovery plan, there's a budgetary allocation, there's AFDB, there's a World Bank, and NIPP sales. So I'm thinking, and I know that there's a $7.6 billion that needs to be gotten from external funding for the next 5 years. Tell us, how far have you come with funding, raising that amount? Help us understand it better.
For me, I find it very, very out of sync when people focus more on money rather than a program. I think I want to develop a program, I want to develop a plan.
Sometimes you need money to achieve that.
And if you had all of the money and you had no ideas, nothing will happen.
Well,
so I like to focus first on a program, a plan. And so that's why I'm talking about PSRP, Power Sector Recovery Program. That's why I'm talking about roadmap and all of that. Then I can dimension how much is required to get that done. The monies that you are talking about do not necessarily come to my ministry. There are programs to help the federal government reduce the deficit side of its budgeting by asset diversification through the sale of certain power plants. So the person who perhaps is best suited to answer those questions will be the DG of BPE and chairman of the National Council on Privatization, because really and truly, it really does not matter to us in the ministry who owns the power plant. What matters to us is that it is providing efficient power. So, and to the extent that government has already committed to privatize transmission, generation and distribution and retain transmission, really and truly, I don't lose sleep about generation plans. But I know that they are under the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, the drivers of the NIPP program. So I get updates on some of those plants, Calabar, Ihovo, Umoku, Bahrain, and all of those, just to see where they are. What I'm interested in, complete them, let them produce power. What government decides to do with them, let BP deal with that and sell them off.
Okay, let's talk about renewable energy. I know it's also a big focus for you.
Oh, it is, absolutely.
So bring us up to speed. What have we achieved so far?
Now, what is interesting, first of all, to understand is that all of these big power plants require one thing. Oftentimes, a power purchase agreement. Government is the bulk buyer through embed. They require transmission lines over hundreds of kilometers, those cranes and towers you see. Now, so in communities where there are not many people, the cost of delivering power becomes therefore very expensive, potentially uneconomic. If I'm going to construct a 200-kilometer, 400-kilometer transmission line to a village that has 2,000 people, the costs just don't make sense. So that's where renewable energy mini-grids have a special appeal for me and the off-grids, because it's the quickest way by which we intend to close the access to electricity gap. Solar systems, solar panels, solar hybrid systems, batteries, those are things that, first of all, our ministry has championed for a review of the pioneer status policy of Nigeria. And they have found their way into that reform approved by the Federal Executive Council for those who manufacture those things in Nigeria. Secondly, NERC has issued mini-grid regulations that allow you to develop and distribute up to 1 megawatt of power without a license. So for a community of 200 families, just put one megawatt there, they'll be fine. You don't need a license. Just let us know you are there. For over 1 megawatt, then you need a license. So this is what we want to see more of. This is what we're now deploying for small businesses, the real drivers of our growth. Markets like Sabon Gari Market, markets like Ari Area Market. Ari Area has 31,000 shops. Sabon Gari has 12,000 shops in Kano. All they need are a few kilowatts of energy to power their fans, to power their bulbs. And this is already happening. And we want to see more of that. So we are mapping the country, trying to establish where the needs are, and also trying to create a map and information database for potential investors. Because I tell people, why is it so difficult to sell a solar system when the man who wants to sell a generator that is fuel inefficient, that is polluting, has no business doing so, has no problem doing so? So why should state governments, local governments, and individuals, really? So for me, it's just a mental transition that requires education, that in the same way that you can buy a generator, you can buy a solar home system and put it on your roof and don't worry too much more about electricity. It's cheaper, it's cleaner, it's safer.
Now, I hear that maybe 2 or 3 big deals have happened in that space, and because I was going to ask you, what's the level of interest you're seeing from investors? I know from a policy side, things appear to be tidy. You're mapping the country, but let's talk about the kind of interest that you're seeing, the kind of money, cash that's coming in for the actual generation of these off-grid solutions.
The appetite is high. I have a top-line view of what is going on, because the Rural Electrification Agency is the focal agency, really. But they would perhaps be able to give you the actual number of investment inquiries they've received, the investment footfalls that have come in. But I just keep a top-line, B-line view of what is going on. And I like what I see, I like what I hear, and I like what I'm experiencing. So I'm seeing factories converting some of their systems now to solar. I'm seeing more solar panels on people's rooftops. I'm seeing petrol distribution companies at the downstream level beginning to install solar panels on their canopies in order to power their pumps. We worked with a particular bank who have committed to help us gather the entire data of solar system deployment in the financial sector, in terms of how many people are using solar to drive pay points, cash points, ATM machines, so that we can really then paint a proper picture of the energy mix of the country as it stands today. How much renewables do we have in solar? How much renewables do we have in hydro? How much other sources do we have in gas?
Now back to, we've talked about incremental power. Some might wonder, at what point are we going to move to the next phase? It's been what, 2-3 years? I know these things take time, but for those who are curious,
2 years and 4
that includes me actually.
You see, the answer really is that you will know when you are there. Your power experience is your power experience. If you have energy, I can't tell you don't have. If you don't have it, I can't tell you that you have. And that is why the only thing I say to people who say to me, almost as if they are fearful, it looks as if it is getting better. I say, look, acknowledge it with the same forcefulness with which you criticize us when it wasn't there. So you will know. People are beginning to say to me, okay, we're getting 18 hours, we're getting 10 hours from 5, but that does not mean everybody is getting. So, but people will know when it reaches steady power, you will know that the transition has taken place. In the way that you know that this is not the way it used to be anymore. It's changed for the better, because people are saying, oh, this is dry weather. We haven't had this for a long time, where we have relatively consistent energy in dry weather. Clearly, this is no longer a fluke. So, and when you get to steady power, you will know as well. Those outages you were talking about will reduce. Those system disruptions will reduce. Over time, they will go away. You will know. It's a feeling.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. Now,
and an experience.
Since you became Minister of Power, what would you say has been your biggest achievement so far?
Biggest?
Achievement so far.
Well, I think that I'm running so hard, I don't look at achievements. Every day, I remind myself that the only reason why I'm here is that there are problems. So if I spend my time looking at what I've achieved, I will miss the problems, and therefore I will miss the purpose for my presence here. Perhaps when I leave, I can look back and say, how far did I run?
Honourable Minister, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate your being here.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking to the Honourable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, talking about Nigeria's power sector, of course, focusing on the power sector recovery plan. This has been a CNBC Africa special. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Esther Awoniyi. Bye for now.